only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. This week, again, I'll apologize in advance for any strange noises or wind. I'm actually doing the podcast in Suffolk in England, and I'm facing a very windy and very very tempestuous night. There's a big storm here, and I'm in an old Elizabethan house dating back hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's a family holiday, so I'm trying to get some time to be alone in order to be able to do this. Also, I apologize, I've got the famous cold. As regular listeners of the podcast will realize, it's never very clear to me what's going to happen every week, and I get towards the Wednesday and I start thinking to myself, what on earth is going to happen and how could it be interesting? And as usual, a few days before, something happens and somebody tries to get contact to me. And this week is no surprise. I kind of knew 3 or 4 days ago that I was going to have the chance to talk to someone who in our terms is maybe nearly 1,000 years ahead of us, which sounds pretty incredible. So I wasn't terribly sure, my God, somebody who's living a life 1,000 years ahead of us, or maybe had passed on 1,000 years ahead of us, what would he have to say about the future of humanity and the future of the world from his standpoint, maybe 1,000 years ahead of us in sort of 2120, which would, I presume, potentially put us at 2024 AD. First things first, I think it was Titan, my spirit guide, who came through and explained to me that this was quite an important message, because obviously it's been revealed before that all time is simultaneous. So just because somebody may apparently be in 3024 or 2024 or 1924, it really makes absolutely no difference, because everything is happening simultaneously. And indeed, the message that came through to me a few days ago is that I and you are living in simultaneous lives at simultaneous times and simultaneous time zones. So in fact, I'm not actually probably going to be speaking to someone who's any more distinct from you and me and our next door neighbor. It's going to be someone who is living a life simultaneously at the same time as us, but 1,000 years ahead. It takes some getting used to, but I think once you realize that all time is simultaneously, it makes an awful lot more sense, because there's a very little sense to think that time is linear. Because if time was linear, then you sort of kick up against all these problems of infinity. It's just, there is nothing infinite about time in that respect, because it's all happening simultaneously. And yes, I suppose in that respect, it's infinite in its capacity to happen. But there is no beginning, there's no middle, there's no end. There's just now a consciousness that we can all tap into. And we generally are aware of a particular time, as I said in my first podcast, because we can tap into the consciousness where we are now in 2023. And I, as a medium, I think I have the ability to twist my radio antenna backwards and forwards, so I can probably skip up and skip down. So for the very first time in my life, I've been told that today I'm going to get a chance to skip up and make contact and find out what's happening in my future. So due to the magic nature of podcasting, I've had 5 minutes to concentrate and see if I can make contact with that entity that was desperately trying to come through to me the other night, and I believe he's here. So I will start off and ask you, please, what's your name? He's telling me that he doesn't have a name. He is from the future. He is from a long time in the future. He's not really saying how far in the future, but I think in our terms it must be nearly 1,000 years. And he has no name, and he says that in this world that we now live in there, we don't have a name. So if you don't have a name, how do you know each other from the next person? He's saying that he has a form of electronic signature. Okay, so what could you explain to us a little bit about what that electronic signature is? Well, why would you have an electronic signature? Are you human? And he says, no, he's not human as we would know it. He says the human species at this time has evolved beyond being purely human. He's actually partly machine and partly human. He said that at some point in our future, humanity manages to miniaturize robotic creatures somehow, almost like these nanobots perhaps, and all people are given these at birth, and they end up becoming part of our cellular mechanism. And he's saying that it makes us part human and part machine. But the benefits to that, he's saying, are that it enables humanity to go way beyond its normal capacity in terms of thinking and intelligence and creativity, but also in terms of controlling disease. So could I say that it was a little bit like last week where we were talking about viruses? And he's saying, yes, it's quite similar, except these viruses are artificial and they've been manufactured by scientists, and they control as well as enable us to do incredible things. Okay, and so you are what? You're known by some sort of electronic signature? And he said, yes. He said he couldn't explain it to us further than that, but people in his state would be able to recognize each other by an electronic signature, what we may call a name. Can I ask where you live and how does that work? He said, well, because they are now a mixture of humanity, they don't sleep. They eat, but they eat a very specialized diet consisting mainly of high protein liquids. They don't live in houses as we would recognize it. He's saying actually that many of them, people like him, live underground, and they live quite deep underground, and they live in structures that have an above ground portion which is used for growing plants and stuff like that, and underground is really basically where they live. Can I say, what is the state of the world? Is that the reason that you live underground? And he's saying yes. He said due to the cycles of the sun in the last few hundred years, it's become almost unbearably hot, and because of the nature of humanity now, because it's evolved, your average human, he's telling me, is nearly 1 foot, that's probably a third of a meter, taller than people would be at the point that we would recognize people in 2023. He said that also has had various effects on the structure of the human body, because the body has evolved to the point that it's actually quite difficult for the bone structure to support us, he's saying. And therefore he says that we need all sorts of help in terms of that, and it's ended up being much easier for us to do less physical work and really concentrate on mental work. And most of what they're doing now is creation. They've managed to evolve to such a point that they can use the mind to control things in a way that we can't control at the moment. And they have, of course, a whole range of machinery that did all the work that human beings used to do, everything in terms of the farming and the manufacturing processes. So there is very little need for human function anymore, beyond being able to control all the technology and being able to create and benefit from it in a human way. Although he wants to stress again that the technology is so advanced that you really on a day-to-day basis wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a human and a machine, and in many respects machines are far more advanced in terms of computational power, but by building the machine within the human you get this mixture, this special mixture that makes it different and keeps humans completely different from machinery. And it's very important. He's stressing that's something that everyone values, particularly in his society. It's really funny, as he's talking to me, I've started crying, and quite badly, really. I have absolutely no idea. And I could ask, is this something to do with you, that I'm crying? Is this a reaction? And he's actually saying yes. He said he's just so overjoyed to get the chance to talk through a human that he's heard of in his history, that this ancient history of theirs, where humans were basically a pure animal, and very simple beings living a life that was very, very different from the way they're living it. And he's actually completely overcome himself at the chance to be able to have some communication with us. And he feels that it's a lovely romantic thing for him that we do what we do as humans, because they've evolved so far beyond that they just don't have the same emotional capacities anymore like us. And he fully recognizes that people generally just don't cry anymore. They don't have the same emotional needs. They don't have the same interaction with each other. Things have become a lot more logical and a lot more, he's saying, sort of businesslike. Could I ask, did we do something bad to the world? In our current time here in 2023, we all talk about how the world is heading for destruction, and it's going to be destroyed by man-made global warming and all those sorts of things. And he's saying to me immediately that yes, he said that a lot of the earth has been destroyed to the point of it being extremely dark. There's so much heat and there's so much flooding. A lot of the continents have been reshaped and would be unrecognizable to us now. He says that it's very dark. He keeps saying that. And he says that that's also because of the sky has been filled with dust and debris. Would that have been caused by wars or bombs or anything? He said, no. He said it's not that there's been some sort of cataclysmic event. It was just a slow process where the effects of man on the environment caused eventually, he's saying, the sun to be almost blotted out in huge portions of the world, which made it impossible for growing plants and vegetation, and therefore life in general. So the people that are alive have managed to contain their life within bodies that are partly machine, and can also adapt to the environment that they're now living in. The housing, as he said, has also been designed to protect people from the environment by being partially underground. And the social interaction is limited, very much so. People live in these quite large communities, but isolated in their own little housing pods, and they don't meet each other physically very much. He says, if you saw me, he said that you probably wouldn't recognize me that much as a human. Our bodies have changed incredibly, he said, in a very short space of time. But he says, in terms of, they don't have hair on his head, he's saying they have very big eyes. They have long fingers. They're much taller than we were, very thin, very pale. They don't value the same things anymore that humanity used to value 1,000 or whenever this was years before. And he says that the earth is very habitable, but he says the earth isn't the only place now where humanity lives. The humanity has long since discovered, he's telling me, the ability to go through dimensions. He said that was discovered a few hundred years ago, and since then it's a choice for people to be living on Earth, and a lot of people have moved away from Earth long ago and exist ultimately in other dimensions and in other galaxies and other stars. And it's very easy now for people to travel, if they wish, within special machines to these different places. Yes, he's saying that it's almost like he said there was a time that was in his, not in his life but previous to his life, that it was dubbed almost that the humans had moved into the galactic phase. He's saying that they discovered the ability to join, if you like, the galactic federation of all the people, all the creatures, all the different forms of life that exist across the billions and billions of light years of time and space, and they became part of that. And it's as if that it was just a phase that we had to reach to get to that stage, and then suddenly, once we'd reached that phase, we were able to communicate and to interact with all these different species and all these on all these different planets. And he says that a lot of these different species and planets that have been visiting for hundreds and hundreds of years on planet Earth are complemented by us, who have also done exactly the same. And he's saying that we also live on many, many different planets and cohabitate and share technology and ideas and thinking and education across all these multitudinous dimensions. I'm quite interested to ask you, do you have a form of society, like a government, or is there some sort of hierarchy, or how does it work? And he's saying there is absolutely no hierarchy anymore. There's no form of government. There's no need for people to be governed. He said they're not laws as we would recognize it. Things have evolved to such an extent that he says that he and his fellow humans, or amalgams almost, he's saying, of human and machine, they behave in a different way from humans in that respect, and it's something that has enabled them all to become very consciously aware of their connection to each other. And so everyone is simultaneously able to communicate and to feel and to see what's going on with each other. So there's very little need for anyone on the outside to organize things, because it's all organized within, like a sort of great big hive almost. He says it's a perfect society in a way, because finally there's no poverty, there's no war, there's not hatred anymore. There is love, but in a way that we perhaps wouldn't understand love, because he says that there isn't any point in love as a particular utility anymore, because he said that people don't produce offspring in the same way. It's all again done with machinery. He said there is the capacity if people wish to do that, but the human body again has evolved in such a way that you don't really need to do that anymore. It's almost considered to be unnecessary. Population control was very, very important, he said, hundreds of years ago, and society evolved in order to see that population can be controlled in such a way that people don't need to produce a number of offspring. There's no great feeling or need to do that. He said the human population, hundreds of years from our time, ended up going up to nearly 20 billion and rising, and with all the issues that were coming with the changing of the environment and the planet, it was almost becoming unsustainable that people could live and survive given what the earth could provide. But he said luckily with the advancement of technology and robot technology and artificial intelligence, it was possible for us to evolve and enable us to travel to other planets. So a lot of the strain on the earth was reduced by the ability for people to leave Earth and to move through to other dimensions and other planets, which are equally as hospitable, and in most cases very hospitable, or even more hospitable than planet Earth. But planet Earth, to him and to many people who live there, it remains their home, and they love their home, and they couldn't actually see themselves living on other planets or in other systems or other realities, and for that reason they stay where they are and really enjoy that. I had a thought, what about the animal kingdom? I mean, are there animals and plants and trees as we know here in 2023? he's saying to me that some very bad news in a way, that with the slow destruction of the environment of the planet, vast numbers of animal species were completely wiped out. He said that obviously it started off being wiped out due to the lack of sunlight, but also because of the lack of food, and because humans also needed their food, so there was a lot of overhunting. And then over the hundreds of years, almost 90%, he says, of species of animal, whether it was birds or fish or dogs, cats, elephants, whatever it was, all, he said, have gone. The genetic material was saved, and there is this movement at the moment, he's saying, that certain other dimensions, certain other planets would like to share that material with us. He said it's happened before that animals who have been extinct on our planet have been resurrected on other planets, and he says we have a lot of animals and life from other planets and other realities, other dimensions, that were brought to Earth and are living here, living in our environment as well. He said you'd be surprised, he said, how many animals, and obviously humans included, and how many on this planet and how many on other planets are almost identical in terms of their genetic structure and their evolution. He said that you have to remember, it's not that there is a God who created heaven and earth and all things. He said that this the information that was needed to be able to create life is something that obviously has existed and exists simultaneously, and it will exist simultaneously because there is no time, and the same information is available to all planets and all people in all solar systems and all galaxies. And we're not an accident here, because we are just one group of society that tapped into that knowledge and evolved on the planet as we should evolve on this planet, as animals have, and humans and other species have evolved on other planets. So they're all pretty similar. It's not like, he's joking, he said it's not like they're sort of monster aliens out there. He said they're all really remarkably similar, but just the only thing that's different, he said, is in terms of their evolutionary age. And he said that I'm talking to him, and he is 1,000 or more years ahead of us in our time. But they've come across many civilizations that can be as much as 1 million years ahead of them. And he said that the way that humanity has, or human beings, or the species have evolved in a million years is what makes them different. It's not that they're just a different species, or they're insects or anything else. It's just it's a huge time-based evolution of the animal kingdom. I'm quite interested, if I could ask, how do you guys get around? I mean, obviously in our world we get around with aeroplanes and cars and ships and other vehicles. How do you get around? And he's immediately saying again, you've got to remember that that's not their motivation. They don't really need to get around anymore. They are very easily satisfied to be living within their very tiny little communities, and if they need to meet people, they meet people through their mind, and that's as real as being able to meet a person for a person, he says, in our time. But obviously, yes, if they need to go vast distances across galaxies and everything else, he said they are sort of the hubs where you can go, and we would call them spaceships, but they're not really spaceships because they don't move. He's saying they don't move at all. I said that's obviously the fallacy of spaceships, is that spaceships at the moment are built in, he said, in our time, in terms of movement, like a car or a plane, because we think we need to go distances to go places. But of course his technology and our technology evolved to the point that it was realized that you don't actually need to move at all to go limitless distances. It's all done through manipulating the fabric of time and space. And so you mean it would be almost like we see in those movies, kind of like a sort of portal or wormhole or something? And he's saying, yes, exactly. He said it's exactly that. It's like you go to this hub, and in this hub there is a facility where you can choose where you want to go, and you literally you give a document. He said we'll have a document that says who we are, and what our electronic signature is. We connect that electronic signature to the location that we wish to go to, and then through this technology, this machine, he says you almost just like walk through a door, and you're there, you're where you want to be. And you can do this all the time. You can go backwards and forwards all the time. So it's just like going to, he's saying, it's like in your time, it's like literally just going down the road, to walk down the road. You can walk down the road, and you can be billions and billions of light years away from where you started. So I'm guessing you don't do any exercise or anything like that, or swimming, or no, absolutely nothing. There is no need, there is no utility, he's saying. There's no purpose in all of that, because we don't need to get that. Our bodies don't need the exercise to function. The bodies are so highly evolved. The machinery within the bodies is so perfectly tuned and so perfectly simultaneously bound with human body that it makes up for any losses that could be had by a bad diet or by no exercise, or and so I'd have to ask again, what about sickness and stuff? And he said there is no sickness, no sickness at all. He says the human body now can live, in our terms, he says, for thousands of years, which is again part of the reason, he says, why it's not really necessary for procreation, because the human body now, it's linked to artificial intelligence and to machinery, is limitless almost in terms of its longevity. And he said that was one of the great scientific breakthroughs, that not only made medicine almost obsolete and drugs obsolete, but it also enabled people to live forever. So therefore you didn't need to have so many people creating more people to populate the planet. And since there's very little death, so people do die. So how would people die? He said, it's a complete personal choice. There becomes a point, for whatever reason, that people wish to move on into other states of consciousness, because we've also become far, far more aware, he says. And he's saying it's almost like the podcasts that I've recorded, which is really nice that you must be listening to them. He said that it's as simple as that. He said that now we've become not only aware of ourselves and our bodies and what we can do, and overcome all the limitations of the human species, we've also got this complete understanding of where we fit into the whole spiritual framework. But obviously we are still partly human, he's saying, and the only way to move on now is to let go of that part of the humanity that we are. And so it becomes a choice that now people choose to die and to move on to different realms. And like he says, like you've discussed before, that you can then move to that point, that place where you can meet your soul conscious, and you can then decide what else you would like to do in terms of your education. And then you might well choose to live in a future generation, or choose to live in an older generation going back before 2024. It said it's just the choice. But at this point, death is purely a choice. And it's a choice that people make for positive reasons. There's no illness, there's no death, there's no murder. There's no need for people to fear dying. It's just something that people do out of choice. But of course they do realize, he's saying, that once you choose to die, then that's the end of your physical life on this earth, and you move on to the next things. I would like, lastly, if you could just tell me a little bit about science and technology and art and culture. He's saying that it wouldn't be something that we'd recognize. He's saying that art and society and culture is something that can be instantly put into our minds. Instantly we can understand all the music, all the culture, all the art, everything that's ever been done. We can see it, we can create it with our mind. There's just this limitless ability now to access this huge encyclopedia, this huge, massive, cosmic gallery of everything that's ever been created, because they are so in tune with the spiritual world, that they can simultaneously now see all dimensions, and they can see everything while still remaining human. It's a total evolution of the human that incorporates spiritual as well as human and machine. He's saying to me, now that you've heard all of this, you're probably now going to appreciate why being human, or even half machine, half human, is really of no special designation, which is why they lead a life that we probably would see from where we are, that is incredibly simple, and maybe nothing like the life that we lead, because they don't have those needs that we have as humans anymore. They don't have the same drivers. They don't have the same destinies, the same fears. They don't have the same abilities in some respects. They've kind of lost that. But he says that it doesn't really matter, because people can still travel in time and space. So he said that it is actually something that people do. They can go to the hub if they want to, and they can travel back to any part of human history and experience it. Or they can travel to any part of the future of human history and experience it if they want to. And some people do that as well. And it's very interesting. But he said he can only say again, it's nothing compared to today, where he actually gets the chance to feel the vibrations of someone who is so behind where they are. He said it's like, to us, it's like we look at vintage clothes, or we look back in history in a romantic sort of way. And he says this is why he was crying, and this is why I could feel that, is because it's a lovely feeling for them to actually make contact with just a pure humanity. And he said that there are a lot of people in his particular dimension, in his particular time, who would love to have some of that back, and maybe have the chance to be just human again, living as humans did. But he said, on balance, there really is no point, because they can have all those benefits. They can almost do that tourism if they want to, and yet they have all the wonderful benefits of being what they are, with a limitless life, a limitless capacity to see and understand and to travel, that we could only dream of. Okay, well, we've sort of come to the end of this point. I always limit this, as much as this is so interesting. I have to let them go. I have to let you go. And although this is a very interesting kind of a Christmas podcast, it's yet another discovery that in this respect, even death doesn't really matter anymore, because even death can, to a future generation that could be thousands of years ahead of us, will be a state of choice, and it will be something that will be done for a reason not of health, not because of murder, or not because of old age. It'll be done purely and simply as a way of extending the ability for you to be able to learn and to become a better soul. Thank you very much.